The Israel-Palestine conflict centers on a small, contested land on the eastern Mediterranean. For Jews, it's the land of Israel, their biblical homeland. For Palestinians, it's Palestine, where their ancestors have lived for centuries. This land is sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, with Jerusalem at its heart. Both Israelis and Palestinians have deep national identities tied to this territory. The conflict is about more than land. It's about identity, history, and the right to self-determination. The region's geography, narrow, resource-scarce, and densely populated, intensifies the struggle. Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Ramallah, and Gaza City are all within close proximity, making peaceful coexistence challenging. For Jews, this land is a return from exile, and the center of their faith. For Palestinians, it's the only home they've ever known, rich with culture and tradition. The struggle is existential for both peoples. Emotions run deep, and the conflict shapes daily life and future hopes. The land's significance is both spiritual and political. Understanding the conflict means recognizing the legitimacy and pain in both narratives. Two peoples, one land, each seeking security, recognition, and a future. This is why the conflict endures, defying easy solutions. The Jewish connection to this land dates back thousands of years, rooted in biblical tradition. Ancient Jewish kingdoms, with Jerusalem as their capital, established a deep spiritual and historical bond. Conquests and exiles began the Jewish diaspora, but the longing for return never faded. The land was never empty. Various peoples, including Jews and Samaritans, lived here under successive empires. Both Jews and Palestinians draw legitimacy from their deep roots here. After Jewish revolts, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple and renamed Judea as Syria-Palestina, aiming to erase Jewish ties. Jewish presence persisted, but diminished under Roman and later Byzantine rule. Christianity spread, and Jerusalem became a center for Christian pilgrimage. In the 7th century, Arab armies conquered the land, making Arabic language and culture dominant. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque were built, cementing Jerusalem's importance in Islam. Over centuries, the population gradually became predominantly Arab Muslim, forming the roots of modern Palestinian identity. The Crusades briefly interrupted Muslim rule, but the land soon returned to Islamic control. In 1517, the Ottoman Empire took over, ruling for 400 years. The region remained a diverse mix of Muslims, Christians, Druze, and Jews. By the late 1800s, a new movement, Zionism, emerged in Europe, calling for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This set the stage for a new era of conflict. The land's history of conquest and coexistence shaped the identities of all who lived there. Each wave of rulers left a legacy that still echoes today. After World War I, Britain took control of Palestine, tasked with supporting a Jewish homeland while protecting existing communities. Jewish immigration surged, fueled by Zionism, as Jews established new towns and farms. Arab Palestinians, the majority, feared displacement and loss of their land. Tensions erupted into violence, riots, revolts, and harsh British crackdowns. The British tried to limit Jewish immigration, angering Zionists as Jews faced persecution in Europe. Both sides formed armed groups, preparing for confrontation. The British struggled to manage the growing hostility and conflicting promises. The dream of peaceful coexistence faded as mistrust deepened. By the late 1930s, the situation was spiraling out of control. The seeds of today's conflict were sown in this era of competing nationalisms. The British Mandate became a battleground for two peoples with irreconcilable aspirations. The promises of the Balfour Declaration proved impossible to fulfill. The stage was set for a dramatic and violent transformation. World War II and the Holocaust intensified the urgency for a Jewish homeland. Holocaust survivors, homeless and desperate, sought refuge in Palestine. Britain, overwhelmed by violence and international pressure, handed the issue to the United Nations. The UN proposed partition separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem as an international city. Jews accepted the plan, Arab leaders rejected it, seeing it as unjust. The land was to be divided, but neither side was satisfied. The stage was set for war as the British prepared to withdraw. The world watched as two peoples braced for a new chapter. The conflict was about to explode into open warfare. The dream of peace was slipping further away. Violence erupted after the UN vote, escalating into full-scale war as the British withdrew. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence. Neighboring Arab states invaded. Israel survived and expanded its territory, controlling 78% of former mandatory Palestine. For Jews, it was a moment of triumph and return. For Palestinians, it was the Nakba, the catastrophe, marked by mass displacement. Around 750,000 Palestinians became refugees, their villages destroyed, their right to return denied. Jordan took the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Egypt took Gaza. No Palestinian state was created. The 1949 Green Line became Israel's de facto border, but the conflict persisted. The refugee crisis became a central, unresolved issue. The war's legacy is still felt in every negotiation and confrontation. The map was redrawn, but peace remained elusive. The seeds of future wars and grievances were firmly planted. The struggle entered a new, more complicated phase. Tensions exploded in 1967 as Israel, facing threats from neighbors, launched a preemptive strike. In 6 days, Israel captured the Sinai, Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Golan Heights. The territory under Israeli control tripled, bringing over 1 million Palestinians under occupation. The Green Line blurred, and a new reality of military rule began. The UN called for Israeli withdrawal and mutual recognition, but ambiguity fueled further disputes. Israel annexed East Jerusalem and began building settlements in occupied territories. The occupation transformed the conflict, making peace even harder to achieve. The Land for Peace formula became the basis for future negotiations. The war's outcome reshaped the region and hardened positions on both sides. The occupation remains a core issue in the conflict. Borders shifted, but the quest for security and justice continued. The Six-Day War's legacy still defines the landscape and the struggle. After 1967, the Palestinian national movement gained momentum under the PLO and Yasser Arafat. Armed struggle and high-profile attacks brought global attention, but also deepened Israeli fears. Decades of occupation bred frustration, leading to the First Intifada in 1987, mass protests, and civil disobedience. The uprising showed the unsustainability of occupation and forced both sides to consider negotiation. Secret talks led to the 1993 Oslo Accords, creating the Palestinian Authority and dividing the West Bank into areas A, B, and C. Hopes soared as leaders shook hands on the White House lawn. The plan was for a 5-year interim period to resolve final status issues: Jerusalem, refugees, settlements, borders. But violence and mistrust soon derailed the process. The Oslo Accords left many issues unresolved, fueling disappointment. The map of the West Bank became a patchwork of divided control. The dream of 2 states seemed within reach, but peace slipped away. The conflict entered a new era of negotiation and renewed violence. The quest for statehood remains unfinished. The promise of Oslo faded amid violence and political division. Suicide bombings and Israeli settlement expansion shattered trust. The assassination of Yitzhak Rabin and the Second Intifada deepened despair. Israel built a barrier around the West Bank, citing security. Palestinians saw it as a land grab. In 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza, but kept control over its borders. Hamas seized Gaza in 2007, splitting Palestinian leadership and triggering a blockade. Gaza became a humanitarian crisis, with repeated wars and widespread suffering. The West Bank and Gaza remain divided, each facing its own challenges. Key issues: Jerusalem, borders, refugees, settlements, remain unresolved. The 2-state solution is still the international goal, but its future is uncertain. Daily life is shaped by checkpoints, fear, and violence. The conflict endures, with no clear end in sight. The world watches, hoping for peace that remains elusive.